Webinar logistics. All participants are on mute. So if you do have questions throughout, please submit your questions via the question window in your control panel. Kevin Brem will be monitoring that. He'll answer any questions throughout the webinar, and we have time at the end to provide more detailed responses. Any questions that we don't have time to get to, we'll send out an email response following the webinar. In addition, you'll receive a link to the recording of the webinar within 24 hours. And if you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, please email Todd Zaransky, tzaransky@rmi.org. So I'll just provide you with an introduction to the panelists that we have from the Rocky Mountain Institute and two guests that are joining us for today. We have on the eLab Forge core team, Karina Chan, Principal of the Electricity Innovation Lab. Hello all. Kevin Brem, Manager at the Electricity Practice. And myself, Associate on the Electricity Practice at Rocky Mountain Institute. We also have two guests, Dana Harmon, Executive Director at the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute, and Doug Lewin, Principal of Stoic Energy. Dana and Doug are past eLab participants from Accelerator. Doug participated this year, a few months ago, and Dana in 2018. And both of them will be speaking to their past experiences, the teams that they were on, and the outcomes of those teams during the event and after the event. Thank you all for joining us. We're looking forward to hearing your perspectives, Dana and Doug. I'd also like to provide a quick overview of the objectives for the webinar. Many of you may have already looked through the application document and seen our website. So we'll try not to spend too much time hashing out what's in those documents, but we urge you to reach out with questions after the webinar if we have not addressed any of your concerns or curiosities. We'll provide an overview of eLab and eLab Forge specifically. We will describe specifics of Forge 2019, including what Forge provides projects, the 2019 project types we're looking for, and what makes a strong Forge project. As I mentioned, Doug and Dana are joining us to provide highlights from their projects from past years and speak to their experiences. At the end, Kevin will describe the application process as well as a timeline for the application and time for any questions that have been unanswered during the webinar. And before we provide an overview of eLab, many of you may be aware of Rocky Mountain Institute. RMI provides tools in analysis, in research. We provide expertise in whole systems thinking. We also focus on multi-stakeholder engagement, and this is really where the Electricity Innovation Lab comes in. More detail on why eLab.
So, hello everyone. eLab started around 6 years ago, and since then we have convened hundreds, close to thousands of people together across the nation in order to help support them in their endeavors to transition the electricity system. eLab exists, and those of you who have participated in eLab may know that we try our hardest to bring stakeholders together in new ways so that new outcomes and plans can result. The theory behind eLab is that collaboration is difficult, but it's necessary for two reasons. The first is that the problems that we're facing in today's electricity system and the opportunities we face are ones that we've never faced before. And so we can't simply take best practices from another geography or from another place or even similar regulatory system, because those best practices do not yet exist. And the situation that we face is that many of us, in answering the questions and starting projects that we are currently doing in the electricity system, are actually doing something no one's done before. So the way forward is to collaborate. What we are seeing more and more is that we are working in a situation where no single person or organization holds all the information or resources, and therefore not just multiple perspectives, but the ability to collaborate together after ideation, taking on new roles potentially than we have in the past, is required in order to make headway. This kind of convening is really exciting and interesting to us. What we endeavor to do at Forge and our Accelerator at Summit is to bring together the individuals who will be the decision makers who are designing, regulating, operating, benefiting, and serving the grid of the future. And the outputs of convening, we've been really excited about the kinds of discussions and outputs that have occurred based on eLab convenings in the past. And they tend to be in the category of these 4 bullets that are shown here. People come together and test new ideas or new mechanisms, potentially ones that have never been tried before, and gut check that against other experts who can provide input into how solutions can be designed. Groups often also work together on frameworks, new ways of thinking about, categorizing, understanding, or even making decisions and navigating risks about the opportunities we face. Building capacity for people to work together, some of whom have, worked up till now under inherent power dynamics, and sometimes even competitors who are excited to come to an eLab event because of the ground rules and because of the facilitation that we provide that enable them to relate to each other differently than they have in the past. And finally, as a result of these 3, people are able to come together and develop ideas for collaboration and action going forward. Anyway, there's a lot more about that, and we can get specific about how this applies and shows up in the eLab Forge model specifically.
Great, thank you, Karina. So in the electricity innovation, eLab Forge, it's an invitation only 2.5-day working meeting, and we're really looking to accelerate high potential, scalable ideas that advance clean energy at the distribution edge. This year, when we say the distribution edge, we're specifically talking about distributed energy resources in Texas. And our overall event objectives, and this is applicable to any of our Forge events that the eLab team at RMI holds annually, but we aim to convene stakeholders to address regulatory or policy barriers, again, to accelerate high potential projects and support them moving to the next level. And one of the things that's really important to eLab in looking at teams and making sure that we're getting the right diversity of perspectives in the room, the right perspectives in the team, and the right projects moving forward is that they're scalable. And this is really that element of how do we get these projects to move to the next level, and how can we do this using Forge as a platform to accelerate that. Another objective is to increase awareness among utility, service providers, policymakers, and many other stakeholders who may not be aware of the opportunity or may be struggling with potential challenges that are not recognised. One of the things that we're noticing to be most valuable about this experience, and Karina touched on this in her introduction, is that we're looking to create and strengthen connections between a diverse set of leaders from across Texas. So we're looking to create new alliances, and sometimes either counterparties or competitors. One thing that we bring to the electricity innovation events, including Forge and Accelerator, are faculty. And in faculty, we bring diverse experts from across the electricity system that can help teams, and they do this through coaching. Sometimes these experts may be experts in regulatory transformation, in low and moderate income equity access, in portfolio design. And this faculty is really representative of the teams that we have and the problems that they're struggling with. So you'll see a list there of past eLab faculty. We've had John Wellinghoff, former FERC chairman, Tom Stars, the Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Policy at SunPower Corp, Eleanor Stein, former New York PSC, and Sonia Agarwal, VP of Energy Innovation. So that's just a snapshot of who we've had in the past at our event. If you go onto our website, you'll see a longer list of the kinds of diverse expertise that we try and bring to these events. For Forge, we have two faculty that we have for Texas 2019, Carl Rabago, former Commissioner of Texas PUC, and Steve Corneli, Principal Owner of Strategies for Clean Energy Innovation. Moving forward, we aim to have 5 to 7 faculty at least, so 1 faculty per team, if not more, for the Forge event. And we will be selecting faculty based on our team selection process after application to really make sure that the diverse set of experts we're bringing address the issues our teams are grappling with. So in addition to the faculty, we also have facilitators. Each team at Forge will have a dedicated RMI facilitator. And these facilitators really work with the teams from before the event, after the application process, and they do this through working with the team champion. They conduct needs assessments with each team member. They help design the agenda for the event. In addition, they guide the work of the team at Forge, and this involves pivoting where necessary. They'll respond to the group's needs at that point in time. And following Forge, there'll be some light project support offered by the RMI facilitator. These facilitators are selected based on their expertise in the area that the team is working on, but they are not directly involved in the content. So they'll be there to drive the work forward of the team and not be driving the content of that team. I'll just provide a little bit of an overview on the Forge project and project team specific to Texas 2019. So Forge is project focused. We'll have 5 to 7 teams at Forge, and each team will be having a very different project scope. Each team will have 5 to 7 people, and these teams will have a diverse set of stakeholders represented. So a point here is that we won't have 5 to 7 people from the same organisation in a team. It's really critical to the team's progress that multi-stakeholders are representative and that diverse perspectives are represented. Projects will have a clear champion or owner, and we designate them as the team champion. Again, this is the primary point of contact before, during, and after Forge for both the RMI facilitator and the other participants in the team. In addition, projects are theme focused. So you may have seen on the application, we've just divided the teams into 5 categories. And when participants submit their application, you'll select which category you're submitting through. So the first being scaled deployment of distributed solar and storage in co-op and muni utility territory, innovative market solutions for distributed solar and storage in competitive retail regions of ERCOT, community resilience through distributed clean energy, and business models for low and moderate income household access to distributed clean energy. In addition to the 4 major categories, we have an other category for ideas and projects that support distributed clean energy resources in Texas. So that is to say, if you are interested in submitting a team that's focused on EVs or energy efficiency, demand response, we absolutely encourage you to apply and welcome you to apply through the other ideas and projects category.
And it's possible that the project that you're considering for application is, relates to one or more of these topics, and that is fine and welcome.
Great, thanks, Rena. Here is a brief snapshot of the selection criteria for projects. And I think it's important to note here that while our application deadline is June 30th, we highly encourage earlier applications anytime before June 23rd. And RMI during that time is able to help you to tweak the application in order to meet these criteria. So this is an iterative process. We recognise it's a unique event, and we're here to work with you and support you to getting the right people in the room, putting the right project team together, and scoping your project statement so that we believe what you can achieve at Forge is beneficial to your team and achievable as well. In terms of project status, we're really looking for active projects. And that could mean that there's been significant or supportive initial project activity and that there's a clear project future. So there's an outcome that you believe you will achieve from Forge. The project statement, we're looking for a clear understanding of what the objective is for the project, what the need from Forge Texas is, and a clear understanding of the Forge outcome, the product. Project impact, we're looking for what you think the direct impact of this project is, the proof point. Again, is this replicable and scalable? And that may mean, given the unique nature of the Texas market, that this project might be scalable across a specific part of the Texas market, so the non-opt-in entities or the competitive ERCOT retail. In addition, we hope that this is a platform to lead change and innovation, and in some cases, this may be applicable beyond the Texas market. In project teams, we're looking for diversity in both perspectives and backgrounds. This is critical for us in ensuring that all stakeholders' perspectives are being adequately represented within your team. And this comes back to Karina's point about not one person holding all the information required to move these projects forward. So in terms of the project team, again, the RMI team is here to help with that. If you think you're missing a key stakeholder group, please reach out and we can help you get that person in your team. Again, we're looking for an enthusiastic and driven team champion and someone who can sustain the efforts both during Forge and after Forge. With that, I'm going to introduce two of our past eLab project participants. Again, both of them, Dana and Doug, attended Accelerator, which is a very similar style eLab event, though it's run over 4 days instead of 2.5 days. And Accelerator runs with projects across North America in the electricity space. So it's a little of a wider market participant, which you'll see from Dana's team. But I think Dana can speak to that a little bit more. So Dana, thank you so much for joining us, and we're really looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Thanks, Jen, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experience. Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Harmon. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute. We are a collaboration of utilities, retail electric providers, affordable housing providers, and community organizations that are working together to inspire lasting energy solutions for low-income communities specifically. We're located in Austin, but we work throughout the state of Texas. So last spring, I had the pleasure of joining a team at the eLab Accelerator that was focused on overcoming challenges to renter energy equity. Now, I wasn't the champion for that team, but I was a participant, so I'll be sharing the team member perspective on that. The team was co-championed, actually, by Wayne Waite, who was acting on behalf of Energy Foundation, but had a long career at HUD. And Jim Grow of the National Housing Law Project. And Wayne and Jim put together our team because several states have adopted or are in the process of adopting new utility rate designs to accommodate the continued growth of renewable energy in their systems. And the key question addressed by our Accelerator team was what strategies and actions are needed to protect low-income renters specifically from increased energy burdens resulting from the structural changes in the rate designs. But then also, how do we strengthen the value proposition for clean energy investments in low-income multifamily rental markets? And specifically, we were focused on the move to default time of use rates in California, but our team focused on California, but included representatives from other states who could bring different perspectives, and also looking for opportunities to scale the insights from Accelerator. So like Jen mentioned, it was very beneficial for us to have quite a diverse group at the table. Our team included the California Public Utilities Commission, representatives from the National Housing Law Project, the National Resources Defense Council, Asian Pacific Environmental Network, Interstate Renewable Energy Council, Energy Foundation, and then me representing TEPRI. So we had kind of a good mix of regulatory, housing, environmental, community-based organizations, clean energy advocates, which I think really kind of helped strengthen the group and the results of our participation at eLab Accelerator. We were focused on addressing a few key barriers related to the move to default TOU rates in California. Specifically, we were focused on the lack of tenant awareness about how time of use rate structures affect household utility costs and energy savings from distributed energy resources investments. We were also looking at kind of information gaps that might impede the ability of low-income renters to navigate and select the best or most beneficial rate options based on their household energy use profiles. And then we're also looking at whether renters could actually shift load because we know that there are limited capabilities to manage and shift demands to non-peak periods. We were looking at policy and market impediments to delivering integrated distributed energy resources investments to tenant units. And then finally, the absence of a trusted kind of tenant advisor advocate in the project development and implementation process. So our team came together with kind of those sets of objectives, and we went through the process that Karina and Jen have described. And I have to say that the quality of the facilitation, both from the faculty and the eLab facilitators, was really quite extraordinary. It was definitely an intense 3.5-day period. And one thing that I wanted to share actually about my experience is this is an event where you can kind of break away and focus on what you've got going on back at the office. It's really an event where I think you get out of it what you put into it. And I structure anyone considering, or excuse me, I encourage anyone that's considering participating to make sure that you can be fully present for the event. So as a result of kind of this 3.5-day process, we really came up with an action plan that had 5 key components to that plan. The actions were really owned by a group called California Energy Efficiency for All Coalition, or the EFA Coalition, which was a coalition that's made up of several of those stakeholders that I mentioned. But really, we noted the need for the California EFA Coalition to conduct outreach to increase the participation of community organizations in these proceedings and encourage the adoption of kind of a tenant energy equity priority. Increasing their leadership in public proceedings on the design of the California clean energy programs to make sure that tenants really have access to economic benefits from the clean energy investments. We also recognize that although we represented a diverse group of stakeholders, there were a lot of others who need to be brought to the table. And so we recommended a formation of a diverse and multi-organizational project team that could kind of advance this outreach and really be used as communication channels as a result. And then finally, we saw the need to issue a series of reports and white papers on the effect of the move to time of use rates and housing utility allowance policies on tenant utility costs and energy savings to identify the risks and ways to protect against those risks. In fact, actually just last week, the California EFA Coalition, who I mentioned kind of owned most of the takeaways, released a report that was focused, actually they were looking specifically at Los Angeles, but it revealed opportunities to more effectively make energy efficiency programs available for low-income residents in multifamily buildings, and showed that expanding effective programs is not only possible, but cost-effective and comes with meaningful economic and environmental benefits, which is really exciting to see, a year later, kind of the result of some of those experiences. I'll talk for just a minute about my personal experience with the event. Although it was focused on California and most of my work is here in Texas, I have stayed closely connected with the team and we continue to bounce ideas off of each other. So I think that's really, really helpful. I do think that the follow-up meetings that we held were key once we all went back to our normal lives, the project champions and the RMI facilitators made sure to schedule regular calls for like the next 6 months or so, to make sure that we all were kind of held accountable to our commitments as a result of the accelerator, which I think really helped keep that momentum going. I've told Cornelia and Kevin and Jen that I'm really excited that RMI is bringing this eLab Forge concept to Texas. And personally, I'm grateful for the focus on business models for low and moderate income households to increase access to DERs, and that's the topic that I'm most excited about. And I know I've only got a few minutes, so I'm talking very quickly about that experience, but if anyone would like more details specifically on that project or the results of that work, I'm happy to share more details offline. And with that, I believe I'm supposed to hand it over to Doug to talk about a little bit about his eLab experience. Doug.
Awesome, thanks, Dana. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
All right, great. Appreciate that very much, and it was very exciting to hear about your team and what y'all worked on last year. I was there at Accelerator this year, and as you were talking to me, and it reminded me, I think one of the most exciting things about eLab Accelerator or Forge is the ability to interact with the other teams that are there. There's touch points throughout the, in this case, 2.5 days in the case of Forge, or 3.5 in the case of Accelerator, to present, sort of where you're at with your team to other teams, and vice versa, to hear from them what they're wrestling with, where the really thorny, knotty problems are, and to be able to help them through that. It's really quite a learning experience, both on the topic that you and your team are very focused on, but then to kind of come out of that and hear what some of the other teams are doing. So like Dana, I'm an enthusiastic proponent and supporter of this way of doing things. And what I mean by that is I think the folks at RMI have just done a great job of developing this process that they continue to refine and perfect every time they do it, which is really designed to kind of break you out of default modes. I mean, you get into sort of a mode of talking to particular stakeholders a certain way. You know where their objections are. They know where yours are. Everybody's kind of, playing a role, right? It's the sort of that Shakespeare line that all of the world's a stage, we're merely players, and everybody's kind of playing their pre-scripted, predefined roles. This process does a great job of getting people out of that and sort of, helping everybody to see not only each other's perspectives, but just a much broader view. So I know we're a minute or two behind, so I'll just real quickly, the team that I was on was put together by Suzanne Burton, Director of Texas Advanced Energy Business Alliance. It was focused on non-wire solutions. So this is, for the uninitiated, the idea of trying to defer, obviate the need for infrastructure, either transmission or distribution system, with distributed solutions that can be lower cost. Of course, there's major business model problems to get to that point. Our team included a staffer from the Public Utility Commission, Director of Government Affairs from a generator/retailer in the state. We had a Director of Distribution Engineering from a regulated utility. We had someone from a law firm that represents cities who, large consumers, basically in the Texas regulated market. We have party, and myself, I have my own consulting company and mostly work for Energy Foundation as Texas Director, but really at this meeting, my last two jobs, one was Director of Regulatory Affairs for National Energy Efficiency Implementation Company, and before that as a director of a nonprofit focused on energy efficiency. So I was really there kind of as a participant to help make sure that while storage was the key non-wire solution, we talked about other kinds of distributed resources that could be solutions. We developed sort of a process map, flow chart kind of thing for how non-wires alternatives could actually make it into the market. We identified areas where stakeholders could probably work through most of the problems themselves, but a few areas were very clearly there was going to be a need for a more formal process and eventually a rulemaking. We really made quite a bit of progress in those 3 days, and I'll tell you, there were certain points, and you'll think this if you do come to Forge, where you're kind of like, you know, where is all this going? How are these particular exercises getting us towards, you know, the end we're all after here, which is some kind of solution. But I think a real key part of the process is making sure that, A, you're defining the problem clearly, but also seeing that problem from lots of different perspectives and really understanding what the actual problem is, as opposed to your, as everybody's view is, sort of more limited, narrow view of that problem. And that exercise is just super important to get to a solution. And again, I think just expertly facilitated and structured by the team at RMI. Like Dana, I am happy to talk to anybody offline about the experience and about Forge. I'm looking forward to participating there in some form or fashion. Thrilled this is coming to Texas, and thank you, RMI team, for the opportunity to talk about eLab, Accelerator, and Forge. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin, I believe, right?
That's right. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Karina, maybe I can just add one thought here before we continue. That's all right, Kevin?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Well, Doug and Dana, thanks so much for being on the line. Your energy just reminds me that these conversations that happen at Accelerator and Forge, for me, sometimes they're some of the most interesting conversations I've had, both in my professional career and also non-professional. And part of the setup that enables these conversations to get sort of down and dirty is the enactment of specific ground rules that we have at these events. And the ground rule, they include a few about bringing a beginner's mindset about challenging assumptions, including your own. And one key ground rule is our confidentiality ground rule, which is that you can say who was there and you can say what was discussed, but you can't say who said what without their permission. That is to say, you cannot directly attribute any quotes to any specific individual without their explicit permission. And what we have observed, and in our experience, what occurs with this ground rule in place is that people have the freedom to bring their full selves to their work while they're together, and to be able to say things that might not typically be considered conventional or not necessarily represent the party line of their organization, in the spirit of contributing individual thought. And this freedom of being able to do that without being held sort of not, the people whose role officially, or not just enables them to, but it helps everyone be able to contribute to ideation on all sides. All of our facilitators are trained extensively here at RMI, and part of the purpose of that is that you'll see at Forge that we provide a lot of structure in order to enable participants to be free. And that might sound counterproductive, but we use a lot of, at any given moment, we would be facilitating what questions people are responding to, how many people are in the room, sometimes even what direction they're facing, how many seconds they're speaking for, what post-its they're using to provide their answers. And this level of structure provides a democracy of sorts that sort of requires everyone to participate, requires sort of the full participation, which benefits the work of the team, but enables everyone to sort of focus on the most important question at every point in time. Our ultimate goal with Forge is to speed the work you're doing. So make sure that we're asking the right questions in the right order. And we've been told that the discussions at Forge and Accelerator sometimes do the work, work that could not otherwise be done, and definitely work that would have taken months or sometimes years to do over email and traditional correspondences.
Thanks, Karina. I think over to you, Kevin.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all, Jen and Karina and Dana and Doug, for sharing your experience. And good morning from Colorado, or good afternoon if you're in Texas. I'm Kevin Brem. I'm a manager with RMI's electricity practice. So by this point, hopefully you're thinking about which problems you're trying to solve, which could be addressed through this eLab Forge structure. I'm going to wrap things up by talking about the project, application, and timeline. And then I'm going to transition into addressing some questions. So if you are in the GoToWebinar app, you can see there's a little tab for questions. Please feel free to put your questions in there, and that's the way we can address any questions that are relevant to the whole group. Next slide, please. So here we have the timeline to the Forge event. So starting backwards, again, the event starts on September 16th at Lakeway Resort outside of Austin. The key deadlines you see here, working backwards from there, are June 30th is when applications are due, and June 23rd is the deadline for draft applications. So June 23rd is a Sunday, so actually June 24th, start of business Monday. If you have an application that you'd like to receive some feedback on, please send that to us and we can provide feedback in that given time so you can provide a stronger application. I think sort of the thing to emphasize that's part of this timeline is while ultimately we can, we're going to have to choose from, through a competitive decision through a set of applications based upon what's on the application, we want to provide the offer to help coach and strengthen opportunity or strengthen applications. Subsequent to the applications being received, we hope to be able to make decisions and notify final teams by mid-July so that there's plenty of time to set aside time on calendars and prepare for the event. Next slide, please. There are participation fees associated with the event, and those cover primarily the cost of the venue. The participant fee for Forge is $1,500 per person for nonprofits, not-for-profit organizations, NGOs, and $1,800 per person for for-profit entities. Fees include the following. They include all meals, all event activities, and hotel room. A limited number of scholarships are available to offset the cost of participation for individuals who might not otherwise be able to attend. Generally, those scholarships are reserved for entities who wouldn't be able in any form to pay their own dues. Sometimes that includes representatives of public utility commissions or other folks from public entities who really would need to have the fees covered. Next slide, please. Forge application, RMI staff are here to work with you to help you submit the best application. Like I said before, please provide any initial applications by June 23rd, or alternatively, we are happy to connect via phone call. And I have one message here saying that there's a lot of questions. If you have a lot of questions, we would be happy to connect for a phone call. You can email elabtx@rmi.org is the general email for the event. Alternatively, Jen Lillis or myself are happy to connect for a phone call. Let's see, so turning it over to questions, I'm gonna address one question that was previously asked and then address some of the other questions that are coming in. The first question is, there was a question about, does the team champion have to have a fully assembled group of participants prior to submitting the application? So two parts to this. Number one is RMI is here to help coach teams and help get the strongest bunch of applications possible. So within that, we are happy to leverage our network to help connect and find missing pieces and help suggest who might be additional helpful additions to a team. It's best if those connections can be made prior to the application, because that just allows you to put your strongest foot forward in the application. But frequently we've had either sort of a placeholder for, hey, we want this type of organization, but we haven't identified the individual, or we'd like you to help us identify this remaining individual, and we can help support that subsequent to the proposal submittal. I have a question here. If there is a lower fee if a hotel room isn't required, currently no, because we're kind of wrapping in a variety of costs into the application fee. We recognize that some folks who might be in the Austin area might be able to attend during the day. We encourage you to be able to make sure you mark off your calendar to spend as much as time possible there. Part of the experience, like we've said before, comes from being there for some of the social activities which happen after sort of the normal day. But if you are going to be sort of commuting in from Austin, the application fee still stands for the whole event. Let's see, at this time, I don't see any other questions. So with that, again, I'd invite you, if you have any questions, reach out to elabtx@rmi.org or Genevieve or I. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Jen, I'll send it back to you to see if there's anything else to wrap it up.
That would be great, Kevin. We have two more thoughts on this end that we would just like to touch on before finally wrapping it up. The first one, we are prompting this question: can RMI help connect us being participants or potential applicants, with potential team members?
Yeah, so this is Karina. One thought on whether RMI can help sort of match make you with potential team members for your team. As Kevin was saying, the ideal application will be one where the champion has already reached out to key stakeholders and allies to solicit their interest. Sometimes we know that it can be a touchy or sensitive relationship where you really don't want to make the formal invitation until you've been formally already approved or accepted. However, I guess I'll just be very clear that one of the ways in which we assess the strength of applications is the degree to which champions have already reached out to key stakeholders and what those stakeholders' interest level is. That said, there may be instances where there's a certain expertise or a specific stakeholder perspective that the champion is not able to recruit for the team simply because they don't have that contact. And in which case, RMI would be happy to help dig into our network to see who we can sort of stock your team with to make your team more successful. So I guess one way to think about this is sort of what's the threshold, what's a key relationship? Well, let's say you're a community-based organization seeking to champion a team, and the idea you have is to create, is to co-create with the utility a new business model that would serve low income in a specific community. If the purpose of your project is to co-create that, that's an application where we would expect that you would have already reached out to the utility. So that's an example. The same goes the other way, obviously, if the utility is seeking to serve a community and work with them on a specific program.
Great, thanks for clarifying, Karina. And one more thought, can you say a little bit more about diversity? How important is diversity in the application?
Great question. I will say that diversity of perspectives is essential for us getting to better solutions. And that is sort of the premise on which eLab and Forge is based. And that is why we seek diverse perspectives. So, you know, a team cannot be stocked with, you know, 5 people from a single organization and then 2 other people. That's, to us, that is not a diverse enough team. Diversity to us means more than just organizational. we are also talking about making sure that the diverse members of community and society are represented, because these solutions we're working on are meant to be broad-based, right? They're meant to be solutions that enable a genuine, a real energy transition for all. So, you know, RMI is becoming more experienced around diversity. We consider ourselves students in terms of getting better at running events that encourage diversity. This means diversity of all kinds, from organizational to gender, people of color, making sure that the communities that are meant to be served are actually represented when possible. Being able to represent these kinds of diversity in your application will make your application stronger. If your application concept is pretty strong, but we have questions around whether you have a diverse enough set of stakeholders at the table to really come at an effective solution, that may be something we follow up with you about in terms of how we can work together to help increase the diversity of your team.
Great, thank you very much, Karina. I would just like to thank Karina and Kevin, our panelists from the RMI core team at eLab, for joining us. And a huge thank you to Doug and Dana. Your perspectives are both very different from one another and highly valuable to explaining the sorts of process and methodologies that teams can expect when they arrive at Forge and the outcomes that they can expect. So thank you very much for providing your insights. To all of the attendees, thanks for joining us on a Monday when I'm sure your inbox is filling up rapidly. We really appreciate your time. And as Kevin said, we encourage you to reach out to the elabtexas@rmi.org email on this slide. The recording will be coming out within an hour, I think, of this webinar, so expect that in your inbox. And we're available anytime to chat further. We're looking forward to chatting with you soon, and we're certainly excited to be in Texas, where we know everything is bigger, so we have a high expectation what to achieve there.
Yeah, I can't wait to read these applications.
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.